It is Miami week for the Louisville Cardinals. On today's episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast, we're discussing what we learned about Jeff Brohm's team in their victory over Virginia. We'll talk about the different scenarios up to date on how Louisville can make the ACC Championship game, and then we'll also update you on Jarvis Brownlee injury news. So with that being said, let's get right on into the show.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. As always, I want to take this time to thank you all again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. Just a reminder that the show is free on all streaming services, including YouTube, 5 days a week, your team every day. Well, it is Miami week for the Louisville Cardinals. Final away game for Jeff Brohm's team. We will sort of recap the victory for the Cardinals against Virginia, discussing what we learned in review about this team. We'll also update you on the current ACC Championship game scenarios for Louisville. There are currently 3 of them. And then we'll talk about the Jarvis Brownlee injury update that head coach Jeff Brohm gave in his Monday morning weekly press conference. So a lot of football talk on today's show. Before we really start to talk about Miami, we really didn't have a ton of opportunity to discuss the outcome against Virginia in its entirety. I mean, we had the live episode. And first, I do want to thank you all for tuning in live to the first official Locked On Louisville live episode. It was a blast. I had a ton of fun. I loved that I got to see your all's comments in real time, what your all's thoughts were on the game, rather than having to go back into the YouTube comments or social media on Twitter in the replies and see what you all thought about it. So I thought that was pretty cool to see. Hopefully looking to have more live episodes in the future for certain. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll try to give a little bit better of a heads up in that regard. But we got to discuss what we thought about the Virginia game. Simply put, the silver lining was that a win is a win. This team is still 9-1. So as much as you could complain or you could criticize the performance, the silver lining is that the team is still 9-1 on the year. Now, that doesn't make this team exempt from any type of criticism, because I felt like we were pretty realistic in what we thought. I honestly was not all that impressed with the offense, as probably no one was impressed with the offense. Shout out to the team for being able to respond to the adversity when they went down by 7. They ended up answering the call every single time. They got a field goal, and then they got 2 big-time touchdowns. Amari Huggins-Bruce with the big touchdown catch, and then Isaac Garendo with the 73-yard score to take the lead and ultimately put the Cardinals ahead for good. Defensively, I felt like there were some solid moments in that first half, not allowing a single point. Looked like it was going to be another one of those games for Ron English's unit, but credit to Virginia for being able to make some tweaks in the second half. I felt like they moved the ball well at the end of the first half, but some bad turnovers on their part helped the Louisville defense out. I felt like overall this was a great individual game for Louisville on the defensive end, to where there were some solid individual plays that led to turnovers. But from a collective sense, Virginia gave the Cardinals some fits with a true freshman quarterback, and that's something that isn't the greatest thing to look at. Virginia was only 4 of 15 from or on third down, I should say, but they had 434 yards. One of the only times this season where Louisville was outgained in terms of yards. But overall, they were able to pass the ball well. They ran for over 100 yards, and they had 13 penalties for 100 yards total. So it is what it is at the end of the day. You can criticize it as much as you want. I think, in my opinion, two things can be true at one time. A win is fantastic. You would rather have an ugly win over a loss any day of the week, but there are also some things that this team needs to work on. Let's talk about what we learned about this team. Well, for starters, is that Louisville's pass rush continues to be potent. Ashton Gelati is one of the best pass rushers, not only in the conference, excuse me, but the country as a whole. He has been fantastic, but it's not only just Ashton Gelati. I think that we continually learn that this is as balanced of a defense as we will probably see in quite some time for this Louisville program. You look at what the Cardinals did on Thursday. Devin Neal, once again, the transfer from Baylor, led the team in tackles with 11. Ben Perry had 8. Ashton Gelati had 1.5 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. Jared Dawson had been battling injury this year. 1.5 sacks, 1.5 tackles for loss. Des Tell was fantastic. Jermaine Lole. You had Antonio Watts, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. So ultimately, I felt like Louisville did a great job of pressuring the quarterback. But another thing that we have to see is what we learned is that if a quarterback is extremely mobile, there's been times this year that the Cardinals have struggled. I mean, Haynes King in the opening game, this past game against Anthony Calandria, guys that probably aren't truly known as running quarterbacks, but have the ability to extend plays with their legs. I think that that's something that we learned, is that this defense has to do a better job of containing opposing quarterbacks. They did that with Riley Leonard and with Kyron Drones. Now, granted, Leonard had that ankle injury that he was nursing, so you have to take that into consideration. But they had been doing that for the most part, but it just goes to show you that Louisville has to be better defending the rush when it's not designed, when quarterbacks are just able to get through the second line of the defense and extend drives. Calandria did so through the middle of the field. So that's something that we learned, is that this team needs to be better in terms of quarterback containing, which usually they have been. But this week just goes to show you that it has to be better. Another thing is that I think the Cardinals have to be better in terms of coverage on the back end. I like Louisville's safety room. Granted, not having MJ Griffin really, really sucks, because he would have definitely been one of the best players in pass coverage this year. I think that the safety position has to do a better job of covering the big plays downfield. There were a handful of plays that Virginia's offense was just able to execute, getting the ball to their star wide receivers, Malik Washington, Malachi Fields, down the field. And they were able to do that multiple times this past week, being able to take the top off the defense. That's something that I think we learned that needs to be better, is that the secondary, especially in the back end, has to improve in terms of not allowing those big plays. When Louisville doesn't allow big plays, more often than not, they're going to win games. So those are the things that I learned defensively. Offensively, and we're going to talk about this throughout the week, is that we learned that, and we have been learning this, is that it's not just Jawar Jordan and a couple of backups. It's Jawar Jordan along with 2 very solid running backs, making up one of the best running back rooms in the country. Is that Isaac Garendo isn't your traditional backup. And to an extent, Maurice Turner is not your traditional backup. Isaac Garendo has gone over 100 and I'm sorry, not 100. He's gone over 90 yards in the past 2 games, each 140 something against Virginia Tech. 6 for 94 and a touchdown against Virginia. Now, granted, one of those was a 73-yard touchdown run. But that just goes to show you that with Jawar Jordan battling those health issues, battling that hamstring problem, that you can slide Garendo into this role and allow him to receive the majority of the targets, or the majority of the carries in one game, and have a very, very solid game. I also think that it shows you, what we learned is that it shows you potentially how defenses are going to try to handle Louisville's offense in the next couple of games up until season's end, is trying to stack the box and force Louisville to throw the football. Virginia did it. We saw it against Pittsburgh as well. Granted, I felt like you sort of saw it against Duke, but not so much as extreme as you did against Virginia, is that it seemed like Virginia really stacked the box and essentially said, look, okay, we're going to do what we really haven't done all year, and that's defend the run. Granted, the Cardinals had almost 200 yards rushing, but a lot of those were due to big plays. 120 of those yards, 110 of those yards came on 2 runs specifically. But we're going to force you to throw the football. We're going to force Jack Plummer to beat us. And I think that's something that we're going to have to see moving forward, is that Louisville becomes a little bit less one-dimensional. Now, I'm not saying that this is a reflection of how bad Louisville's offense is. I just think that is going to be a situation to where Louisville's going to have to be better when it comes to when they have to throw the ball, being better in that regard. Now, not all that's on Jack Plummer. Not all that's on coaching. Not all that's on the receivers. Not all that's on the offensive line. It's on everyone. So I think that's something that we learned, is that potentially we could see teams try to play Louisville that way moving forward as we gear up towards a very tough part of the back end of the schedule. So, but like I said, it is Miami week. A lot riding on this game for the Cardinals against the Hurricanes. I now want to talk about updated ACC Championship game scenarios in which the Cardinals can make it to Charlotte in the first weekend of December. We'll talk about that here momentarily after we talk about our friends over at Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry about tickets when you're buying them to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With last-minute deals, all-in prices, view from your seats, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. For me, the lowest price guarantee is what makes things worth it with Gametime. It's essentially saying that if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Hey, Cardinal fans, I want to take this time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On College Football Kickoff Live will air this Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on every Locked On College YouTube channel. College Football Kickoff Live will cover playoff implications, the conference rivalry games, while also going in-depth like only Locked On can, including insight and analysis from our stable of Locked On College hosts covering their team every day. Find Locked On College Football Kickoff Live every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on any Locked On College YouTube channel. You won't want to miss it, so be sure to stay tuned. ACC Championship game is a couple weeks away. Florida State seems like, it's all but certain that they are going to be in that final game. I actually think that they have clinched their spot in the ACC Championship game, not having a single loss on their record yet. But that second spot has not been clinched yet with the win over Virginia. It seems like Louisville is the heavy favorite to be that second team to face Charlotte, or to face Florida State in Charlotte. They are currently a 95% favorite to make that game against the Seminoles. But there are 3 scenarios, and I wanted to talk about those scenarios. You've probably seen them. If you haven't, well, you're going to find out now. But even if you have, I want to talk about a little bit more in depth because it paints a picture of what is at stake this weekend. For starters, I think the main thing is win and you're in, right? If Louisville beats Miami, there's no significance as to what the other teams do. It does not matter. The Cardinals win against Miami, they are automatically punching their ticket to Charlotte. That is the number one thing. That's the silver lining, and that's the thing that at the end of the day, that's what matters most, right? You punch your ticket to Charlotte by winning the game, and nothing else matters. And that's the thing that deserves most of the attention. But I do want to talk about the other scenarios because this is going to be a tough game for Louisville. I'm not suggesting that they're going to lose this game, but I do want to at least play the hypothetical game and talk about the different scenarios in which Louisville can make it to Charlotte, even with a loss on Saturday. Now, they would have made the championship game had Duke defeated North Carolina last Saturday. Now, granted, I think Duke did defeat UNC, But what they didn't do is that the Blue Devils did not defeat UNC and the ACC officials. I will be completely transparent when I say that that was one of the worst officiated games that I have ever seen in my 25 years on this earth. It was extremely one-sided. I thought that there were some plays, especially at the end on the interception, that wasn't even reviewed, that was automatically a catch with no review. I felt like a lot of these calls went the Tar Heels' way. And if you are a conspiracy theorist that feels like the Cardinals, there's an agenda against Louisville in the ACC and that there's a lot of favoritism showed towards Tobacco Road, UNC in particular, then this game definitely didn't do anything to alleviate those concerns. But nonetheless, you can't really just hold on to that as an excuse if Louisville, for some reason, were not to make it as, oh, well, would have been in had the officials done their job. It is what it is. You move on now. Let's play the hypothetical game and say that Louisville doesn't beat Miami. There are two different scenarios. One is pretty cut and dry. One is as confusing as all get out. The first one of the two is going back to North Carolina, and this is something we talked about. If they were to have lost any of the final three games, Louisville makes it in regardless. Now, they beat Duke. This week is a very, very interesting one because they are at Clemson, and Clemson is a team that we've seen that can beat any team in this conference on any given afternoon or night, but they're also a team that can lose to any team in this conference on any given afternoon or night. So the road game to Clemson is going to be a very, very interesting one for North Carolina. That's one that Cardinals fans should be watching very carefully because that could have a big-time effect. Now, granted, if Louisville wins, like I said, it does not matter, but at the end of the day, we're playing the hypothetical game. So 3:30 kickoff there on Saturday at Clemson, and then the other game is against NC State in the final matchup, not this upcoming Saturday, but the one after that. They will be at NC State. With the quarterback issues, if you're a Louisville fan, you feel a lot better that if Louisville were not to beat Miami, that North Carolina just goes ahead and loses to Clemson right away. So that's the second scenario, is that North Carolina loses one of their final two games. The third one, and shout out to Kelly Dickey at Real Card Game on Twitter. Great Louisville statistician, has all the stats that I'm not even sure that the university knew that they had. He tweeted this out, and this is no disrespect to Kelly. It's just the scenario, and it confuses the hell out of me. I'm going to read this, and if you get confused, that's okay because I'm confused reading it. But essentially to me, and what I'm seeing, I'm hoping that I'm interpreting this the right way, is that it looks like Louisville needs four different things to happen. Number one, it needs Virginia Tech to lose to either NC State or Virginia. Virginia Tech beat Boston College last week. That was a team that we saw, a lot of emphasis was going to be on that matchup. So number one, you need Virginia Tech to lose to NC State or Virginia. You also need, and this is kind of one of those or situations, you need one of the next three things to happen. You either need Boston College to beat Miami in the season finale, you need GT to beat Syracuse, or you need Pittsburgh to beat Boston College. So you need VT to lose to NC State or Virginia Tech, and you need one of either Boston College, Georgia Tech, or Pittsburgh to win of those three games. You also need NC State to beat Virginia Tech. I think that that's how that goes. It looks like it's a situation to where it confuses the heck out of me. You need a situation. I think that it sees that NC State beats Virginia Tech and Duke beats Virginia and Pittsburgh or loses to them both. So simply putting it this way, because that just confused me reading it, I thought that I had understood it, but after further review, the ruling on the field is that I have no damn clue as to what I'm reading in terms of this third scenario. Simply put, the most clear ways in which Louisville can make the ACC championship game, and ones that Cardinal fans should focus on, without trying to drive themselves insane with that third scenario, is that Louisville wins or North Carolina loses. That's as simple as it gets. And I think that I would rather just the Cardinals win on Saturday down in Coral Gables and not have to worry about things. But in the event that they don't, you need North Carolina to lose. And if that doesn't happen, then you need Virginia Tech to lose and either Boston College to beat Miami, Georgia Tech to beat Syracuse, or you could have Pittsburgh beating Boston College, NC State beating Virginia Tech, and either Duke winning the last two or losing the last two. So it is what it is. We will obviously talk about what happens after this week, but I at least wanted to talk about updated ACC scenarios without trying to confuse everyone. But it seems like I just started confusing myself. So moving on, let's put that behind us for the moment. Jeff Brohm gave an injury update to star defensive back Jarvis Brownlee. Unfortunately, it was not optimistic. We'll talk about what that update was here momentarily after we talk about our friends over at Jace Medical. Look, we spend a lot of time talking together, you and I. We get fired up together on wins, and we complain a lot on losses. Who starts, who sits, etc. I'm thankful for that connection we have, and today I want to chat to be a little bit more personal. If you or someone you love would like to get some peace of mind by having a year's supply of daily medication, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use the promo code Locked On for $20 off of your first purchase. A verified customer had this to say about Jace. I'm thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills and have to have it. I ordered most of my daily medications with a year supply. I also ordered antibiotic kits. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. All it takes to get a Jace case is to fill out a simple online form and, in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of our board-certified physicians. Get ongoing care from our physicians on any treatment-related questions. Doctor created, doctor recommended. Once again, be sure to go to jacemedical.com and use the promo code Locked On to get $20 off of your first purchase. On Monday morning, Jeff Brohm had his weekly press conference previewing the upcoming matchup, having a little recap about the previous matchup, answering questions. One of the questions was surrounding the availability of Jarvis Brownlee. Brownlee has missed the past two games due to a foot injury that he re-aggravated in that matchup against Duke a couple weeks ago. And paraphrasing this, Brohm said that he was not optimistic about Brownlee's availability this upcoming week against Miami. So once again, the Cardinals are going to be without one. It's seemingly going to be without one of their top defensive backs. And for a Miami team that now has some quarterback issues at the moment because of injury, it looks like Emory Williams is going to miss the remainder of the season. Veteran Tyler Van Dyke is going to be, or seemingly going to be, the go-to guy for the Miami Hurricanes. Now, this is going to be something to where I think that they're going to try to throw the ball a lot on this Louisville team. I think the Louisville rushing defense, you look at what Miami has done, they average about 5 yards a carry. Now, some of that is skewed due to big plays, but their leading rusher is under 500 yards. They have 4 players with over 280 yards on the ground, and each of those players has at least 2 rushing touchdowns. So there's going to be a lot of players in that backfield to prepare for, but I think that this is going to be a situation where Tyler Van Dyke likes to throw the football, and we're going to see a situation to where you need guys to step up for this Louisville team. He also turns the ball over a pretty decent amount with double-digit interceptions. So the main thing for me with Jarvis Brownlee seemingly being out is that Storm Duck once again is going to have to step up in his absence. The transfer from North Carolina, former all ACC level selection, has stepped up big time. I think it was, I don't think it's up to date against on ESPN, but he led the team in tackles against Virginia Tech and had some big time moments. And he's going to be a player that is going to be relied upon a ton for this defense moving forward, especially in pass pro. And this situation now, when you have a quarterback that is prone to turning the ball over a lot, I think that that's where you have a guy like Storm Duck that can really having a player like him can really play to your advantage. It's also going to be on Quincy Riley to be a lockdown cornerback once again, having him at the spot to where you're not having a lot of struggles in the back end and the secondary as a whole. I mean, you could point out Duck and Riley specifically. I think that those two guys are going to be relied upon the most. But you also have some other players that are going to have to rise into that spot, especially at the safety position as well. You have guys like Josh Minkins, Cam Kelly, Devin Neal going to be relied upon in coverage. Other defensive backs that are going to have to be looked at as Trey Franklin, Derek Edwards, D'Angelo Hutchinson, etc. So I think that, losing Brownlee isn't the end of the world, although he is a fantastic player. It definitely hurts this team, but you have the quality depth that can help this team rise up to where it needs to be. So it's going to be a lot of not necessarily pressure, but responsibility now on Storm Duck to really be able to step up and fill that void against probably, I'd say, the most threatening passing attack that you faced in the past 3 weeks since Brownlee has gone down. So that's just something to focus on. As the week goes on, we will preview this matchup against Miami. We'll have Grant Mulligan on an episode this week. We'll have a crossover podcast with Alex Dono of Locked On Canes. We will talk about what's at stake, players to watch, keys to victory, and more. So be sure to stick around to pay attention to the Locked On Louisville podcast this week. A lot of great content coming your way. But that's going to wrap up this Monday episode of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here